Hello, and welcome to this week's video. This originally was supposed to only be a visual aid workshop video, but I decided to add a little bit to it at the beginning, considering that the class I'm making this for is in the middle of doing their speeches to be posted online and so forth. And this is about your informative topic, and I think I need to cover some basic things. Uh, that way, I'm not having to cover it on Friday. So here goes. First off, as always, your outline for all three of your speeches is the same outline, which you will find in files. A lot of this class, a lot of easy points are lost by not doing the little stuff like your evaluations and your outlines and participating when we can participate. Just FYI, students think if you just do the speeches that you'll be perfectly fine, but you might have a bad test or something and you need to do the little stuff too. Let's see, just some basic stuff like that. But I think I need to say this again. You really need to know what the sections do for your speech on your outline. So you need to know what the intro sections do. My dog is walking out on me. The intro. So I really need to cut her nails. You need to know what the intro sections do. You need to know what the main point sections do and so forth, what transitions are. We've been covering it since day one. But most importantly, you need to make sure you cover those sections and so forth. But most importantly, you need to make sure you get the right topic. And I think this is a problem. And I'll be honest, a little bit more than usual, which is students not choosing the right topic. First off, you need to choose a topic, again, that is relevant, that is something that people can discuss or don't know about, but is a real thing. And so that you can find references. In fact, I'm going to say this right now. If your topic is very unknown, you need to make sure you have references to show that it's a thing, and so forth. So you need to make sure you choose a topic that you can find references. And I'm not talking just any kind of online, but citable references, preferably library database type stuff. The other thing is that the best way to understand an informative topic, again, you're not telling anybody to do anything. You're not telling them to change their behavior. You're not telling them to think a certain way. You're just trying to let them know about a subject. And the best way to sum up what an informative topic needs to be, and there was lists, and we've gone through this, but I think I just need to restate it in a different way, is it's physical in nature. An informative topic is physical in nature. And what I mean by that is it's something that you could talk about, and essentially you can point to it. You could point to it or something about it that is physical in nature. What I mean by that is if you're doing a speech on homelessness, you can point to the homeless downtown or that are around us in our neighborhoods. If you're doing some of the band speeches, cartels, you can point to and say, this is the country that the cartels run out of. Serial killers, you can go and point to a history book, or you point to, like, these are people that actually existed. Coronavirus, obviously, the requirements and the disease is real, no matter what your uncle on Facebook says. It's physical in nature, and you can point it out, and you can so forth. And then that goes for even some topics that you might think are not physical in nature, because there's somebody who probably invented it or has a theory about it. So for example, I had a student do a thing about relationships, and the subject of relationships is not a subject that you can talk about because it's too generic. It's too, whatever. But what the person did was they pointed at a relationship expert or a theory, or, like communication studies, we have interpersonal communication. So there's things that you can physically point to, like this person has a theory it's physical in nature. And I was going over the topics and reading these outlines and stuff, and I just think that Some students your topics are just a little bit too broad, too generic, or it's not something you can easily look at. I once had a student, and this is for persuasive, not informative, but they wanted to do a topic where they wanted to require gyms to put a water hose in sauna rooms. There's no references there. There's nothing there. And the reason why I use that as an example is because there's no references for it. There's nothing to do about it. And even there's nothing there. And the informative topics, some of the topics are in the area, there's nothing there. And that's not good. So find something that you can find references for, find something with informative that you can point to and say that's a real thing and not just a generic broad sum. It's like, I'm going to do a topic on t-shirts. Well, there's a million types of t-shirts out there. Okay, well, I'm going to do a topic about this one t-shirt company that changed the game. There you go. So look at your topic and see if it's something that is real in nature and so forth. All right. All right, let's do the visual aid workshop. Now, when we started this part of the class, this section after the midterms, the thing I talked about was issue variance, how you can have different levels of issues, like, persuasive, how much you support it, 25, 50, 75, 100%, or against it, same thing. And then informative, you can be like the broad, abstract, all of it type stuff, or the more narrowed focus type thing, right? And one of the examples that I talked about was the different levels of education, and which is sometimes controversial because I'll do this class in front of college students who took charter schools, who went to charter schools or magnet schools. I've taught this class at charter schools. And one of the things on that thing was a charter school. And students are sometimes a little bit, like, why you have a problem with charter schools? Well, let me explain a little bit. Now, there's lots of different reasons why, but there's one situation. I'm going to explain the situation for you. There was this large area of a school district that, if you looked at this, if you took this large rectangular area, there was 4 middle schools in this that facilitated this large area of the city. And what they decided to do one day was make one of those 4 middle schools into a magnet school, a charter. And then what ended up happening was the students from that neighborhood had to go to the other and then they even were bused to them, and then other students were bused to the magnet school. And that became a problematic thing because they were taking all the smart kids, the kids that got accepted to the magnet school away from the middle schools, thus taking away some of the more productive students, some of the students that can help the overall school, and usually had more parents that were part of the process, and were more inquisitive. And then they were taking the students who couldn't make it into this charter school to the other public schools. And this area was middle to low income area. And what ended up happening was the students that were from the poorer, rougher neighborhoods tend to go to this one of the 3 middle schools. And thus that middle school that got a lot of their smart kids got shipped to the charter school. They took in a lot of the problematic students, and it became such a burden that the whole system in that school failed and became a failing school. And yeah, so why does it have to do with visuals? Well, I just explained something, and some of you might have got lost in that explanation, or maybe I could have had a visual thing to represent it. This is my little impromptu design. Here's that area that I'm talking about. And as you can see here, this little M represents the magnet school. The light arrows represents the kids that tested well and got sent from the schools from the area here into the magnet school. And then the students that were from this neighborhood, which far outweighed the amount of, those students coming in, had to go somewhere else. They had to go to these other schools. And the majority went to this one school, including some of the rougher neighborhoods in this, for this school here, which by the way, also had rough neighborhoods around it as well, and thus became a failing school. If I had a visual representation while I gave that description, this might have been easier for you to follow. By the way, this is a real place. This is a real thing. I actually visited all 4 of those middle schools, and I was actually stationed at that failing school for almost a year. If you want to Google it, Google Fort Millard, Fresno, and you might find some articles from back when I'm not in the articles, but back when I was there, the problems that they had there. And this magnet here is called Cooper Middle School in Fresno, California. This is a real scenario. And if I had a visual aid, a PowerPoint in the back that kind of gave a map of that instead of just explaining it, it might have been easier for you to follow. That is the importance of visual aids. Visual aids are very important tool in the class, which by the way, there's going to be testable questions on this visual aid workshop. And I said it in class already, 75 to 85, roughly around 80% of judgment from a communication comes from the nonverbal part. So you take me, for example, right now, I'm in this t-shirt. Yeah, it's a college t-shirt, but I'm just casually, not the best shaved in the world, probably not the best to try to make a first impression type look. All right. So most of the judgment. So while I'm talking to you and you know me already, this is probably not going out and meeting new people or job interview type wardrobe. So, but now that you keep that in mind, think about when you are giving a speech, that judgment is part of it. And while I tell students, dress appropriately, never wear shirts that have crazy designs or a lot of words, because you don't want them, reading your shirt instead of listening to you. Most importantly, you don't want to be a distraction to what you were trying to say. In fact, the right outfit can actually help, make it a nicer environment. Like, oh, this is someone we listen to. They're sharply dressed or something. The same thing goes for your PowerPoint slides. And, we live in a world where PowerPoints are needed. It's PowerPoint, Google Slides. And I tried, I think I said it in class already. It was one semester I tried to teach a class and it didn't go so well the first half because I was trying to teach without PowerPoint slides. I tried a staff training without PowerPoint slides. Never again, never again. And so the reason why I tell you this, and I'm bringing this to you now, is because you're going to have to make presentations in your future. In this class, I might repeat this video for other classes. So remember, when you're watching one of my videos, whatever I said in the class is the final say. All right. But the class I'm making this for, the second speech, a visual aid, like the Zoom and you share screen and record like I'm doing right now, that's a bonus. The third speech is the one that you have to have a PowerPoint presentation part of the video that you're creating, which you can do in Zoom. And the reason why I'm saying this right now is that it's going to be a part of not just in this class, but probably in future classes or even in your workplace, where you have to give a PowerPoint, and not just a PowerPoint, because this also covers advertisements in general. So some of the information I'm going to give right now will actually be things that are from public relations, from my public relations background, from friends of mine, colleagues who are in the public relation game. And so This is important stuff that might be in your future. So let's go into share screen real quick. And we're going to cover the worst of PowerPoint slides. And I'm going to show you things that you got to watch out for. And a simple Google search. Now, we already covered really bad print ads. We already covered that part. You know that part already. The thing about the print ads was, the message they were kind of giving and how that's bad. But bad PowerPoint slides and so forth. There's a couple things to remember. Sometimes it's the whole presentation is off because you're doing too much or you didn't think about how it balances out and stuff like that. So here, it's simple worst PowerPoint slides, Google search, and you can find it yourself. But here it is right here. And I'm going to use the little pointer. Here's the little thing here. I should maybe change it to something where you guys can see it a little bit easier. But here's this thing here. And it indicates a couple things. Like first off, by the way, if you look at these PowerPoint slides, some of them were created by, very well-known institutions. I think this is the Air Force here. This is a giant tech company. I think there's a couple tech companies in here. And it's just like, ooh, they weren't really thinking. So here's a couple of just basic things you want to avoid. And you can get minus points if PowerPoint, especially when PowerPoints count. If you do the bonus PowerPoints for the second speech, just FYI. And again, this is only classes, this rule only applies to the classes that I say can do this. Your PowerPoint can be a distraction, all right? You still have to follow the rules, even though it's for bonus points. All right, so here's the thing. The first thing you want to avoid is Bijou, make a decision. My dog. The first thing that you need to do is make sure that there's not too much information on it. So if you look at these slides here and here and here, there's just way too much. And sometimes, I mean, this is chaotic. I don't think anyone's going to be trying something this chaotic. But at the same time, you can see here, these are just a few words. This one right here, the very first one. It's a few words, and they have a title card and it looks nice, but look at that. Way too many pictures, way too much stuff in the background, too much stuff all put together, too much with the words, but with the images as well. Sometimes students will put too much information on it, either by too much text or just too much images. That's another thing. Another thing, and some of these are that you don't want to have like long, complete sentences or too many sentences. I gotta pause this real quick. Okay. Oh, dog rectify. And she's okay. I had to just isolate her because she indecisive. I didn't want her walking around with the click, click, click on the hardwood floors. All right, so let's go back to share screen. So like I was saying, too much information. You don't want them reading sentences or paragraphs or anything like that. So too much content, that's one thing. Too much content, you want to avoid it like the plague. Another thing is the balance part about it, visually. Look at this slide right here, how rivers are formed. You want to see the problem here? There's a beautiful background thing, but the words bleed right into it. And in some places, the lettering and the river have the same color. Same thing with this one over here with this little cute, adorable cat here. Again, too much content and so forth, and it gets lost with the background images. There's a lot of them like this, where this car one right here, again, too much content. One, but more importantly, the lettering gets lost with the background image. There's a bunch of them like that. So you need to make sure that here's another one right here. And this one right here, the lettering and so forth gets lost. So make sure that you are You don't have too much information. And two, make sure the thing that you hit up there is distinct. That people know what they're reading or looking at. They can see it. It's not lost in the background or lost with a bunch of other images or so forth. So you want to make sure that not too much content, not too much information, that you're balanced out and so forth, with the images and things like that. You don't have things on top of each other, or it bleeds in or merges together and so forth. So here's, like I said, too much information, words and images getting lost, and so forth. So you just want to avoid some of these things. I'm trying to look for any other big things that stick out. Too much content, words too getting lost in there. These are all real PowerPoint slides. And then sometimes they just might look too ugly, or they clash, or things of that nature. Another thing is you want to make sure it's appropriate for the classroom. That's a very important thing. Sometimes you can do sensitive topics. I once had a student, very successful speech, by the way. Student won a scholarship in the speech competition. First time speaker, by the way, took my class. But the topic was free the nipple. And it was about sexism on Instagram and so forth. And the student, when they gave the speech, they had slides, and some of them were kind of risque, and they warned the students. And it was perfectly fine. But then I had another student who, it's one of the reasons why the cartels are banned, did the Pablo image when Pablo Escobar was murdered, and had the picture of him dead on the PowerPoint without warning the class. And then I had multiple situations where students had inappropriate things. And so while I'm not showing any representation here on these worst examples, you want to make sure that you are you're using the inclusive rules for the class, applying those as well. So make sure that you don't have too much information, images, words, and so forth. And then also make sure you balance out the image, make sure, background image and the words above it bleed in. And then lastly, make sure that it's inclusive, or nothing is too inappropriate for the classroom. And if you have something that is relevant, that might be a little bit problematic, that you warn the class ahead of time. All right. Make sure you save any questions you have for when we meet and so forth. But let's go over the generic stop. Get out of stop share real quick and go to a thing that you are quite familiar with. And that is my slides, my boring slides. And so we have a general thing. Now, I'm not going to teach you how to do a PowerPoint or do anything like that. That's another class, another time. I used to teach PowerPoint in the public library system. And I can tell you that if you need tips and how to do it and so forth, you're more than welcome to set up a Canvas meeting with me. I have no problem with that. And I also recommend checking out your public libraries, because they sometimes will have free computer classes as well. But the thing is, the reason why I'm using my boring slides is there's a couple things of information I'm going to give out right now that are testable questions from lecture. And so when you are doing a PowerPoint, you're going to notice a couple things with my PowerPoints. One, they're boring. Two, they have a theme. They have a theme. And the theme is, I actually have it. You can actually see it. Let me see. Let me get a blank page so you guys know. The theme is this. This is a knee pad. It's a legal pad. It's different than normal legal pads because the red line is not right here like normal. It's over here. And this is the thing I used when I went to college, is I used these things. I love these things. These are the best. Hard to find now. Very hard to find. Very hard to find. I actually went to Southwest Law School, where they had a bookstore at a law school where they were supposed to be selling this stuff, and they didn't even have them there. But knee pads are amazing. And so that's my theme. It reminds me of when I was a student and so forth. And, I try to refrain from certain things and so forth, because I want to make sure I remember that I'm teaching. So that's why I use the color scheme. But the color scheme I use also makes it easy for you, the students, to read the words on top of the colors. So that's why it's in black ink. They had the faded, or is that orange, reddish, and then the faded yellow for a reason. So you can see the black in the lettering and so forth. So you can see that. And then I don't have too much. I don't put images up on my PowerPoints, but if I did, it would be very, very few. I mean, this is a example of one here, and this is just one slide. But I mean, there's, if you take this slide here, I could easily probably get away with putting a picture right in here. It shouldn't be a problem. All right, so you see how that could be possibly printed out. But what we're going to focus on is the words. And so when we go into the words here, I want you to ask you a question. How many changes of fonts do you see right now? The answer is 2. There is only one font type. There's only one font type, which is, by the way, Calibri, yeah, everything's Calibri on mine. Yeah, so anyways, that one. But there's 2 different font sizes. All right, there's 54 and 20, 54 and 20. And so there's only 2 distinct changes. Here's the thing. A public relations person told me one time that when it came to a pamphlet, we're not talking a PowerPoint slide or a flyer, but a pamphlet, a brochure or anything like that, that the most different types of fonts and changes that you should have with fonts roughly is 5 overall. Just 5, like a pamphlet, not a slide, but multi-page pamphlet or a brochure is 5, maybe 5 different fonts or whatever, but most of it generically in 5. When it comes to slides, like what you see in front of you. And by the way, when it comes to the brochure and the pamphlet, the most fonts that you should use in the overall pamphlet brochure, several pages, different types of fonts, like Arial, Times Roman, is 3. But when it comes to an individual slide, the most overall types of changes that you should have overall with the slide is 3. So like here, I have 2 different font changes. That's size. If I had 2 different types of fonts like Arial and so forth. And the reason why is this. You don't want to have too many. And by the way, that's a testable question. 3 is a magic number there. The reason why is this. You don't want it too chaotic and sloppy and whatever. That's true. But you don't want to strain the eyes of your audience. I'll say this again. You don't want to strain the eyes of your audience. If you keep changing your fonts in the brochure, in the flyer, in the poster, in the PowerPoint slide, if you have too many distinctions, your audience, when they're reading this, is focusing in and out. And when that happens, their eyeballs get strained too much. And because of that, you get them tired. You get them a little bit nauseated, or, give them a headache maybe. And so you want to only use a few fonts. 3 different types of changes the most on a single slide. By the way, I personally on slides, I only use 1 font type and maybe 2 sizes. All right. But you can see here another thing that I do on my slides is I try to have everything spaced out if it's in sections and so forth. I don't try to put too much information and so forth, as you can see here. All right. All right. So if you have questions on this, you can save it for when we meet and so forth. All right. And that pretty much wraps up the basics of this visual aid workshop. Remember those basic rules about what you want to avoid to lose points. Make sure your slides don't have too much information. Don't make sure that they're balanced out. Things are not lost because of the color choices you have, and there's nothing inappropriate or non, inclusive type stuff in it. And then finally, when it comes to the technical stuff, you want to only on a slide at most have 3 changes, if that. Personally, I think 2 is better, but you don't want to have too much, and you don't want to do that because you, like I said, it might be a testable question. 3 is the magic number, but another thing is it strains the audience eyes when you have too much changes in the font and so forth. All right. And that's pretty much it. If there's anything I miss, I'll try to remember it for class and so forth. All right. That was the visual aid workshop and so forth. And the instructions on what you do the rest of the day is going to be in the announcements. All right. Have a good one.